would be a quick
Minor details.
Not even gone yet. So we have a motion from Doug and a second by Ken to reconvene. All in favor? Agenda questions? Please limit your questions at this time to resolutions under new business on the agenda. As a matter of fairness, you're asked to limit your questions to no more than one and your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. If you are here representing a group, please identify yourself, the group, and your position in the group. If you are here as an individual, please give us your name and address. This section of public participation will be limited to 15 minutes. And please specify the resolution that you're referring to in your question.
Evelyn Slockbauer, 43 Thunderhead Place.
Would you mind?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
Just turn that on. I think it has to be turned on the back.
So in the back, the switch.
Evelyn Slockbauer, 43 Thunderhead Place. Okay, my question resides with the transgender policy. So I read it over carefully, and my concern lies with 2 things. The locker rooms. Transgender students shall have access to locker room facilities that correspond to their gender identity. The school district will make available a reasonable alternative changing area for a transgender student if requested. Now, I have to tell you that my son, last year, at the middle school, 7th grade, did not want to get changed in front of the other boys, no less anybody else. Not even, he doesn't want to get changed in front of myself. So their reasonable alternative was the restroom in the nurse's office, to which my son, the 13-year-old, 12-year-old then, responds that that's where the kids get sick and they vomit. I'm not changing in there. So I'm concerned about the wording as to something that may be a reasonable alternative to an adult may not be a reasonable alternative to a middle schooler. And with all the hormone changes they're going through, I think that's a tough age group to get through this.
I understand what you're saying. You said you had 2 questions.
And the second one was about the restrooms. So the if a gender-neutral restroom is available. Again, my son tells me that there's no plastic partitions between the urinals, and that makes him uncomfortable. So if we're going to go ahead with this, and I'm all for going ahead with this, my belief is that there should be stalls, and that the urinals should be removed, and that there should be privacy for all students. Okay, so that's my 2 questions.
Excellent.
On that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start off first things first with another question. The policy that you're looking at is one that you had requested of me after we did the first reading. And I know that you're aware that when I handed it to you, I said, please understand, I don't want you to disseminate this. Exactly. One of the reasons you have 2 readings of a policy is because there can be changes between the first and the second. In our case, with the transgender policy that we put forward, there were changes. Strauss Esme is the company that works with us to do our policies, and this is an optional policy for the board. It's not mandated. Partly the reason it's not mandated is because there is no transgender law at this point. What we do need to follow is the New Jersey law of discrimination, and transgender students are a protected class. So what we decided as a board in looking at the policy committee, or let me say that, is the policy committee is to say, okay, what can we do to make sure that this protected class of students is protected? So a change was made from the first reading with the policy committee to the second reading that has been supplied to the board. And the biggest change is that of flexibility. Option 2 is the option that we first referred to, is very specific. It talks about transgender students using the locker room or using the restroom of the identity that they associate with. What the board has decided to do for 2 very important reasons, I think, or the policy committee, it's really twofold. We've decided to choose another option. And the option that we chose allows us to work with students on a case-by-case basis. So rather than saying, yes, it's the locker room, yes, it's the restroom of the identity that they are, We're saying that we want to work with students, either myself or my designee, which would be a principal, and work with parents on a case-by-case basis. And that kind of makes sense and leads into what you said as far as your son feeling a little bit uncomfortable. What we want to do is we want to provide an alternate setting. We don't want to necessarily say, hey, listen, you need to use that locker room. Because at the end of the day, what we want for kids, including your son, is for there to be comfortable. But we don't necessarily know what every student is going to feel comfortable with. We know we want all of our students to feel comfortable. We know that the transgender population is a population we want to feel comfortable too. But we don't exactly know every child, and every child is unique and different, like your son. So the option that we've chosen is to allow the conversation with parents and the transgender student and determine the best appropriate, non-discriminatory place that a student can either change for their phys ed classes or use restroom facilities. Now, the piece about putting the dividers and the urinals and that kind of thing is kind of a separate conversation, only because that's pretty much how our restrooms are laid out at this point. The second reason that we changed the policy is because we believe that this will change. We believe that there will be more guidance legally moving forward. If we choose the option that we have the opportunity to change our policy immediately. If I say case-by-case basis and a new law comes out that says students must change in a blue bathroom, then I can make that happen in a heartbeat and don't necessarily need to convene the board to do so. At the end of the day, we want everyone to be comfortable, whether it is a minority population or a majority population. So there were changes from what it is that you have here, and I understand what you're saying, and ultimately our administrators do as well, with wanting students to be comfortable, all of them.
Okay, I'd like a copy of the new policy at the end of the meeting.
I would be more than happy to give it to you.
Thank you. And I just, as far as going forward, I think there should be plans for the facilities to incorporate gender-neutral facilities at our schools. And I think that would be a wise move to do that, to make everyone comfortable.
Certainly something we can consider. Thank you.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Slackler.
Okay, Kim Barron, 15 Owino Place. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my concerns and questions as a concerned parent and a taxpayer of Mahwah about the transgender policy. In light of the fact that there are no defined laws pertaining to transgender individuals, and this is not a regulation being brought forth from the state or federal government, I would like to understand why this is being considered and why it is being rushed. We currently have clearly defined HIV policy that covers everyone and does not allow discrimination for any reason. Therefore, I would like to request further investigation and input be conducted before we cast votes on the policy tonight. As we strive to show compassion towards transgender students and the struggles they encounter on a daily basis, I believe the board must also show compassion for the rest of the student population so as not to disrupt their daily routine and force them to feel uncomfortable. The goal, as stated at the beginning of the policy, is the Board of Education is committed to provide safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment for all students. I'm concerned that there are many terms and or wording used in the policy that isn't clearly defined and may create a liability for the district. And those terms include the following. I've got an attachment of 7 paragraphs, but I'm not going to go into that. In my opinion, 2 cases of wording that are of major concern are vary on a case-by-case basis, and district staff members shall be informed of the students' access and use of restrooms, locker rooms, changing facilities, etc. We have policies in place that are very much considered in the box, such as the hazardous route policy and restrictions for participation in extracurricular activities by out-of-district students, to name a few. Because the wording in those policies is very succinct in nature, it leaves nothing up to interpretation. The term case-by-case basis is open-ended and can be influenced by the personal opinion of whoever may be considering the case. Which leads me to my next point: do our principals or superintendent have training, or are they experts in the field of transgenderism? Since case-by-case parameters are not fully defined, it makes me very uneasy from a potential liability standpoint. I'm told the current proposed policy addresses the issue of restroom and changing facilities that will be designated and will be separate as well as convenient and non-discriminatory. However, I do not see the wording in the actual policy that states this claim. I would like to see wording to this effect so as to be satisfied that the privacy needs of the majority of students will also be met. The board has a responsibility to all students as to what is in their best educational interest, and to all residents to be sound fiscal stewards. Have we really fully considered what could potentially go wrong in either or both of those areas? I am very concerned we have not. and would therefore request we table the vote until such time we are able to address this issue in depth. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Mr. Barron, just a couple of comments if I can. And thank you for stating everything you did as well as you did.
Thank you.
As you know, we have been communicating a great deal over the past 6 weeks. When we first talked about this, and it was first done as far as a first reading is concerned, and then the board did decide, based on our recommendation, to table it. Last reading, so we're 2 weeks out, and that's fine. You referred to the hazardous route policy.
That took 7 months, 8 months?
Well, no,
Whatever.
it did. It took a whole bunch of
long
time, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that there are other policies prior to my arrival that took time as well. Part of the reason that it is not specifically stated, and I know we talked about this a little bit, I shared it with you on email, is because it is difficult for us to put in place exactly what will occur in every building with every child, because every building and every child is different. So the case-by-case basis, if I say, okay, we're going to use the restroom on the 2nd floor and we're going to use the nurse's room on the 3rd floor, may be applicable for the high school, but not for JK. Policies are district policies, so we have to be sure we can't put ourselves as strategically as we did in a box, as you said, as we did with the hazardous route policy. There is a lot of information out there in regard to transgender students. In relation to have our principals and our superintendent been trained in transgenderism, if I'm saying that correctly, the answer to that is no. But I haven't been trained in autistic children as well, but it's my job to ensure that they are in a comfortable environment. And as I've researched the questions that you've asked, and I know Mr. De Silva as our chair has as well, we've spoken to a number of attorneys. I know that you have reached out as well for some information, and that's what we do when it's not our forte. And policy isn't necessarily the forte of the board, but they do rely on the administration to get as much information that they can. And all I can do at that point is make a recommendation of what I think is best for a population of students that we do have here in Mahwah. So my recommendation for this policy is to protect them the same as I would any other student. Because all students, and you said that a couple of times, is super important to us, but they're part of that all. So my recommendation to the board is based on a great deal of research and looking at the case law that you have provided, and there are varying opinions. Some of those opinions are more against this policy when, interestingly enough, boards have put themselves into boxes. And then they can't get out of it when they deal with or work with a student on a case-by-case basis that has other things that they may want. I believe in our administrative staff, and I know you talked about that in the training. Dennis and I met with all of our administrators yesterday. We handed out this policy, we talked about its components, what our overarching recommendation was, what our expectation was for all of these students. But I won't tell you that, should we have a sit down and should we talk with one of these students, that we may decide what's best for one may not be best for the other, but ultimately the expectation for all administrators is that all of our students are in a comfortable environment. So I understand you disagree, and I appreciate you being so articulate about it. I hope that we have done our very best to try to answer the questions that we have. The rest is up to the board, and I know what your request is of them. All I can do is provide it.
Okay, thank you. I was just very concerned with liability issues as well.
That's a real great point. We actually have more liability if we don't address the fact that we have a population that is a protected class. So if we were to have an issue moving forward, and the only law we have is that New Jersey law of discrimination, if we don't say that we know they are a protected class, and we don't do what we need to do to make sure they're protected, we actually have more liability not having a transgender policy than we do having one.
There's also an issue that, in one of the paragraphs about students deciding with the school, telling the school what their gender identity is, or in the case of younger students, a parent would be the advocate. There's no age there. I mean, students have to be the age of majority before they can make a decision on their own, or else it's parental consent. So I'm also concerned with parental consent being a huge component.
And I think that you're absolutely right. And because this is kind of a new world for us, not that that this population hasn't been around in districts before, but it's coming to light here in Mahwah, so we've learned a whole bunch real quickly. Yes, students.
As I have.
We all have. And students would need to certainly have their parent with them because they are.
So that wording in there, I'd like to see that maybe tweaked a little bit, because it's basically still leaving it up to the student to make the decision. Then you would sit down with the parent and the student. But in the ultimate decision would be up to the parent.
Well, the ultimate decision is up to the parent, but that's a real interesting point. Because you have this New Jersey law of discrimination, it says that the district and its employees cannot discriminate against a student based on their gender identity or expression. So interestingly enough, if Sally walks into class and says to her teacher, you know something, I'd really like you to refer to me as a he. Now Sally is a minor, let's say. The teacher should pretty much do that, because it's not changing how they are in a roster, it's not changing who the person is in their class. It is a form of expression for that child. I'm sure teachers here can talk about students that they have who want to be referred to as a nickname, but if you look on real time, it isn't their name, but that's what they use. And it's the same kind of thing with this and the pronoun, that if we don't, it is very possible that it will then fall under HIB, which means
I was going to ask,
well,
if they accidentally, or if a student, you know, or innocently uses the incorrect pronoun,
if
or
a student innocently uses an
you know,
incorrect pronoun,
will they be brought up on charges?
That's a
What,
good
you know,
point, you brought that up in an email. If they incorrectly used it, like a student calling another student something else, it would be investigated and we'd find out that it was innocent. But in this case, I think what we want more than anything, like a student being called Sally and not Sally, in the example I gave, is that we want kids to feel comfortable.
No, I completely agree.
And if we don't do that, then what we do is we're discriminating against a child, and because that law of discrimination deals with expression, sometimes kids' expressions come out in what it is that they would like to be called. So that happens to intertwine with the transgender policy as far as the pronoun is concerned. You know, of course we want parent involvement, but I don't think we would skip a beat too much if Sally wanted to be called a he, because that is what Sally felt most comfortable with. Does that?
Yeah, but still, if the
Makes sense.
parent said to you, I don't want you to, then what happens?
We'd have to talk that out. And I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah,
and I don't have all the
that's right.
answers. And I don't know if there's a class on it, and if there was,
Yeah.
perhaps I would take it. All I can do is tell you what we need to do legally and inform the board in that manner. I don't know what we would do in a case where Sally wants to be a he and mom or dad said no.
No.
I don't know, but I'm sure we would be able with the administrative
Now,
staff
do we
to
have
work that
a
out.
gay policy, or do they fall under HIB as a protected class?
They are a protected class, and no, we don't.
Okay, so that's interesting that we don't have one specifically for them, and they're under HIB, but that this class would be a protected class.
And that's a real good point as well. We take our lead from Strauss Esme. They don't make any more or less, depending on what it is we choose to. They don't, whether we adopt it or not adopt it, whether it's optional, whether it's mandated. Mandated we must, and they
Right.
move forward pretty quickly with the board. You see that M in the corner.
Yes.
This is one of those optional policies that the administrative staff brought forward because we just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. For whatever reason, the gay or lesbian policy that you're referring to hasn't made it to an optional policy point at this point. We all know our strengths and weaknesses, and although the board is responsible for governance and policy, and that is their job, they do take their lead from those people who do policy a little bit better than they do. So, great question. I
Thank
hope I
you for your
responded
time.
appropriately. You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I have a very quick question regarding item double M on page 13 of tonight's agenda. With regard to the assistant superintendent merit goal for this school year, I was wondering, perhaps Mrs. Davis, maybe this question is directed to you perhaps as the president. I was wondering if perhaps you can give us some insight as to what those specific goals might be that the assistant superintendent would need to meet in order to qualify for merit pay. And my follow-up question to that would be, which of these goals are contingent upon teacher performance?
I'm actually going to let Mr. Fair answer that
Terrific.
question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Superintendent, how are you?
Hi, Dennis.
Okay, so it's a merit goal, so it's a singular goal.
Yes.
The actual goal is I'm going to be observing all of the non-tenured teachers, grade 6 through 12. Then what I'm doing is I'm taking the data from all those observations as well as all of the other observations of the non-tenured teachers. We're looking at areas for growth as well as areas of strength. analyzing that data, working with the content area supervisors on professional development for non-tenured teachers at the secondary level.
Very good. So then, would the merit pay then be contingent on the performance of the non-tenured teachers?
No, it's just an analysis of
Very
what
good.
we're doing well, looking at patterns, looking at trends, that sort of thing.
Great, okay, thank you very much.
Are there any more questions? Because I think we're done with time. All right. Superintendent's report? Dr. Sherman, would you like to do?
Oh, I would. Good evening, everyone. I know you're probably tired of hearing me talk, but I have a real short report this evening. One of the things that we have to do within 60 days of release of any state results we get on any of our tests is do a public presentation of that. Typically, it's October, and we would have a state testing presentation by Mr. Gliata and Mr. Ulmer, our testing coordinators, and we'd talk all about New Jersey Ask and how we did in all of our grade levels, but as we know, that's been replaced by PARC. PARC is not available for release as far as individual district data is concerned, but we do have 2 tests that I would like to just speak with you briefly about. The first is the New Jersey Ask Science Grade 4 and Grade 8, and hopefully you can see that back there. Due to the rounding of partially proficient, and advanced proficient, those numbers may not add up to 100%, so it's not an error on our part, it's just a rounding piece. But as you can see, both Grade 4 and Grade 8 outperformed our DFG, our district factor grouping, and the state in total proficiency levels. So if you look at that DFG, Grade 4, 97.4, we were at 98%. And as far as the state is concerned, that's a huge round of applause, 47.2 as far as the advanced proficiency, but looking at that 90.6 compared to the 98 is huge. So well done to our teachers, to our staff, to our administrators, and to our students on the grade. Grade 8, as you can see, is not too far behind that. Our total proficiency for Grade 8 on the New Jersey Ask Science was 91.2. Check out the state. Once again, Mahwah is doing absolutely wonderfully, even as compared to our DFG in Grade 8. So well done to Grade 8 as well. The second slide, Dennis, thank you, is the New Jersey Biology Competency Test. Again, the rounding may not equal 100%. Mahwah slightly outperformed the DFG in total proficiency and advanced proficiency, but Mahwah significantly outperformed the state in total proficiency and advanced proficiency on our 2015 New Jersey Biology Competency Test. Once again, congratulations to our staff.
Okay, we have an update on open issues. Mr. Deptula, we're going to come to you for an update.
Yeah, there was a question last board meeting about handicapped access at the football field, and I didn't want to say what I wasn't sure of. There is currently handicapped access. There is a ramp going up the middle of the stadium bleachers. There's a small area for wheelchairs. When that area was designed, I don't know how long ago, it was designed more for what I'll call a push wheelchair that's a little bit smaller. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand that area, if possible before the end of football season, but that has to be done without interfering with safety in terms of all the games that go on. So the worst case scenario is it'll be done at the end of football season, and it'll be there then for the spring and fall from there on in. So again, the parent wasn't aware that there was at least a small area, but again, it would not be ideal right now for the current situation.
Thank you. Mr. Fair, would you like to do an update on personnel?
Sure. I want to highlight 2 members of our Mahwah staff Audrey Thonis, who's a high school secretary. Is Audrey in the audience? Oh, all right. This is her 12th year with us, and she'll be retiring December 31st. Collected a few notes of my own as well as those of her colleagues. For those of you who know Audrey, she's quite the rule follower. She's extremely ethical, smart, solve problems independently. According to her building principal, he stated, and I gotta tell you, she is a bell-to-bell worker. She just works and we love her for it. So Audrey's a wonderful person and we'll miss her. Dorothy Mullen is also on the agenda. Dorothy, is she here? I told her to come. They don't listen. Okay, she's the school nurse over at JK. This is her 10th year. She'll be completing her work here in December. She's been with the Mahwah School District for 10 years, and according to her building principal and assistant principal, she's dedicated to the students and staff of Mahwah Schools. She's a dear friend and part of their family. She's always there for the children, staff members in times of crisis, or just to be a shoulder to lean on, and they cannot speak more highly of Dorothy, and she too will be missed. So, thank you.
Finance and facilities, Ed, do you have anything? Okay, all right. I do have a report. The Ramapo Ridge hosted auditions for the Bergen County Middle School Chorus, sponsored by the music educators of Bergen County. Over 300 students representing 25 schools in the county auditioned for this highly selective honors choir. Mrs. Lahr shared with us that the 10 Ramapo Ridge students were accepted into this year's chorus. This dedication to their vocal development and their commitment to preparing the audition materials is an inspiration to me and their fellow chorus members. So congratulations to them. That's awesome. Awesome. I'd also like to offer my congratulations to our congratulations to the Mahwah High School Marching Thunderbirds on earning first place at the Livingston High School U.S. Bands Competition this past Saturday. Mahwah won Best Visual Performance, Overall Effect, Percussion, and Color Guard, so congratulations to them. Okay, board committee reports.
For policy committee, item 15J on the agenda is, as has been pointed out, the second reading adoption of 5756, which is the transgender policy.
Any other reports?
Instructions got, or negotiations got report. So you guys have on your agenda in items 16U and 16B was the possibility that we would be able to vote tonight to approve contracts with the Principals Association, that's the MAA, and also the Supervisors Association, which is the MSA. And so we're ready to go forward and recommend those contracts for approval. The key terms associated with those are, from a pay raise standpoint for the principals, it's 2.75 in the first year, 2.9 in the second year, and 2.9 in the third year. And they will continue to participate in sharing the cost of health care under the preceding terms of the contract, which is what we typically call Tier 4. Those terms are mirrored on the supervisors program, so they've also agreed to 2.75 in the first year, 2.9 in the second year, and 2.9 in the third year, and they're also continuing to participate in the health care cost sharing the way it's currently structured now. So I circulated committee notes to everybody that should have gone out with your packet, and giving you some background and some color with respect to the NBA negotiations. I did not elucidate how the terms of the agreements that we're recommending for approval tonight match up with the current offer to the NBA, but those terms are identical in terms of merit pay. So it's 2.75 in the first year, 2.9 in the second year, and 2.9 in the third year. Those are the terms that have been included in the proposal that, I'm sorry, not merit pay, pay raise. Those are the terms that we put in our offer of July 25th, and that's presently where we stand. So we're good to move forward on the approval of those other two agreements. So
Thank you.
that's the report.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay. Board member remarks.
I have a remark. Did you want to?
No, I want you to.
Um, I have a remark. 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 I have It wasn't in our folder, but in the email that we sent, that we received, there was a letter from the commander of the VFW.
There was.
That's such a nice letter that it's something that we should share with the rest of the community, hopefully, either on the website or in a newsletter.
I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
That's a really great idea. It was a really moving ceremony, and they did express gratitude that the middle school did take the time to do that. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. Any other remarks?
Real quick on item 16K, which is the list of school volunteers. I'm glad to see the name Kyle Larson in that group. I know it's not ideally what Kyle was hoping for, but I'm glad that we were able to figure out some way for him to participate in some measure. Glad to
I am
see
too.
that.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
As far as board members or remarks are concerned, I know I'm not a board member, but I'd like to speak on behalf of John Dolan this evening. John expressed some views with Chris Davis and I earlier this afternoon, and I said that I would read them on behalf of him. Ed, due to a family obligation, I'm not able to participate in your final board meeting this evening. However, I would be remiss if I didn't make a few comments. After 20 years of board meetings and countless committee meetings in Mahwah, you have earned the opportunity to take full control of your calendar. In addition to myself, you were able to mentor numerous board members to become more valuable in their role. Thank you for sharing your extraordinary expertise, time, and energy with the Mahwah Board of Education. Your legacy is the exceptional financial condition you leave our district behind. You have enjoyed a long and successful career in education, and I wish you a very healthy, happy, and long-lasting retirement with a great deal of respect. John Dolan.
All right. Okay, Ed, I'm last, and I had to write it down, okay? So, please bear with me. Well, Ed, I can think back on Mahwah School District with many different staff members, different superintendents, principals, board members, but through all of that time, there was always you. Now, with your endless hours of planning and work behind the scenes, you help facilitate the continuous improvement of our schools. You have always been a great source of information and advice for the board, and I know I can speak for the entire board and some past board members when I say how much we will miss your knowledge, your guidance, professionalism, and quirky sense of humor that you share with us. So today, as we say goodbye and we say thank you, we hope that you will recall us fondly and enjoy the existing challenges, the exciting challenges that are yet to come. Finally, I hope that you'll embrace the knowledge that you've left a lasting legacy. You have enabled our staff to shape and mold young minds, and you have guided us in our never-ending pursuit of excellence in education for the students of Mahwah. So congratulations, Ed. You will certainly be missed.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Again, too much, nothing.
Chris? Yes.
I just wanted to add something. In addition to being the board administrator, he's our board secretary, which is, I would say it's a rewarding job, but it's also a thankless job, and we all appreciate that on the board. You're always sitting there, you don't leave the room, and we appreciate that. We'll miss you in your color cord. I know you don't realize, I realized anyway, color coordinated ties and shirts and your coffee mug. So enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, any other board remarks before we move on?
Need to know where you'll be performing next.
There you go.
All right, let us know. All right, old business, minutes. May I have a motion, please? Doug and Kim, thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Let's do a roll call.
Oh,
Mr. Salzarini?
Yes.
Mrs. Barron?
Yes.
Mrs. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Abstain.
Mr. Denise?
Yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
yes. New business, I'd like to take motion 15A through MM. And may I have a motion when you're ready, please? Chuck, and second, Doug? discussion? Okay. So, I think. It's on page 7, I think, Kim, that's really it. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was a question.
We okay?
We okay? Okay. All right. Discussion? All right. Roll call, please.
15A through M, Mr. Salverini?
Amen.
MM, sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Barron?
No on J.
Okay. Mrs. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Denise?
No on J, yes on yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
Yes. I'd like to take 16A through V, please. May I have a motion? Okay, so I do T, and then A through, okay. So A through. So this would be 16T. Oh, B, okay, hang on.
Just explain what you're doing.
Okay, we're going to take this 16A through W with the 3 addenda that were added as, actually it would be WX, WXY, actually it would be, right? Because this is B. Oh, wait a minute. I went A through B.
Yeah, there's no saying
Oh, we didn't do them yet, okay,
place them.
gotcha, okay. Okay, I'm gonna do the whole thing. Okay, I'm gonna read this again, sorry for the confusion. Okay, we're going to take 16A through W, okay? And U, B, and W will be the 3 addenda that were walked on, okay? It says A, B, and C on your resolutions, but those would be U, V, and W, okay? And I'd like to ask for a motion now. Doug, and a second, Chuck. Okay? Discussion? All in favor? I'll take a roll call, sorry.
All right, 16A, we're gonna go through T with the 3 addendums on there also. Mr. Salverini?
Yes.
Mrs. Barron?
Yes.
Mrs. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Denise?
Yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
Yes. All right, so we're looking at addenda 1, the suspension. Are we done?
That was W. We just got that.
All right. All right. All right. Okay, public questions at this time. I'm still seeing this too. That's fine. Okay, I appreciate it. Okay. All right, that was my confusion. Okay. All right, public questions.
Hi, I gotta read this. My name is Rich Gordon.
Take it
I've been
out, take it out.
teaching in Mahwah for 19 years now at Grand Ridge Middle School. I'm a member of the Mahwah Education Association. What's the name of the account that all that money is sitting? I didn't want to use the proper term, the capital gains account? Capital gains, like, how much money is in that account? Do we have a rough number, 6 million?
6 million.
6 million? Is that in an interest-bearing account?
Sure.
Do we know how much money, how much interest we're getting in that account annually?
If you ask me the latest interest, it's in the neighborhood of, I think we're getting about 0.5%, maybe a little less.
Okay. And we're also adding to that from on top of the budget each year, right? Isn't it like 1.5 of the budget? I don't know the, 1.5 of the budget gets added onto that?
We have added, it depends on the year, We have added during budget process, we have added at the end of the year, when the state, in the month of June, we have added.
Right, okay, so there's over 6 million in there and money is being added into that account through interest and through the top of the budget. My question is basically, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment that Mr. Saldarini brought up the term fair a few times at the last board meeting. And it just doesn't seem fair that that amount of money is sitting in an account somewhere and we don't have a contract. That's all I have to say.
Hi, Sue Dorsa, President of the MEA. Mr. Saldarini, this is a question to you. Did I hear you correctly when you announced publicly the percentages that were offered to the MEA?
You did.
I'd like to respond to those comments, but to do so would be in violation of our ground rules that the board and the MEA have abided by for over 20 years. Because the board has violated that, because you have publicly announced the percentages, the MEA representation will be filing an unfair labor practice tomorrow.
Any other questions?
Evelyn Slonker, 43 Thunderhead Place. One last question. At Ramapo Ridge, if you do not change for gym, you get a 0. So I'd like to know that you're going to have a written policy with these changes in the locker rooms and whatnot, that students won't be penalized if they decide that they don't want to use a particular facility.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mrs. Lockbear, I was just listening as everyone was walking out. Please begin the beginning part of your question.
Okay. At Ramapo Ridge, part of their grade, their gym grade, is based on getting changed for gym.
Okay.
Okay? I would like to see a written policy that states exactly what will happen to a student if they feel uncomfortable and they don't want to get changed. They should not be penalized and get that 0.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. It's not an uncommon practice in our district and in other districts that students do receive a 0 for not changing. It's part of the participation piece in phys ed. However, before we talk policy or procedure or any of that kind of thing, I ask you to kindly go back to Mr. Miller and meet with Mr. Miller. I'll let him know what your question was this evening, and then he can anticipate a call from you. And perhaps meeting with him and the phys ed teachers there, I would certainly start at that level. Again, saying it is not uncommon that that moves forward. I understand what you're asking, but I would prefer they work it out in-house as opposed to us on a district level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Robin Larson, 8 Babcock Road. I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn? Yes. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Doug and Kim. All in favor? All right. Thank you, everyone.